Tanner, we were taking a look at some long shots to be able to win the college football national title game. Now let's take a look at some long shots to be able to make the NFL playoffs. It would be a little bit rash to try to take some of these teams to be able to win the Super Bowl, but as we know, with the expanded playoff up to 7, there's lots of opportunity, and I do think that there are some teams being slept upon for the NFL playoffs, and I think that the NFC North has been quite mispriced, and I feel like you're in agreement with me. What are you taking a look at in terms of the NFC North? Because it feels like everyone is buying in on the Detroit Lions. I'm not willing to do so based on, I don't know, the history of the NFL, and there are a pair of teams in the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers that they have a lot of good clashes, and I think that these are two teams that provide a lot of value just in terms of game to game and in terms of just the futures market in terms of season wins, playoffs, what have you.
Yeah, everyone has already ruled the Detroit Lions the NFC North champs. I just don't think you can do that right now. And there's two teams that I like to make the playoffs here, the Packers for plus 180 and then the Vikings for plus 115. Out of the NFC North, they could win that division or get a wild card because we know the NFC South, they're probably only getting one team in the playoffs. So that really leaves 3 spots open. And I do think one team in the NFC North outside the champ is going to get in. When we look at the Packers, they're a hard team to judge, right? They have a new quarterback in Jordan Love, and the whole dynamic of the team revolves around him and his growth. But they have playmakers all over the field. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed have a really good running back duo with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon as well. And the defense is talented. So this Packers team, if Jordan Love develops, can be decent this season. There's no doubt in my mind. Everyone's like, oh, they don't have Aaron Rodgers anymore. Well, if Jordan Love is just league average this season, he's going to be a lot better than Aaron Rodgers was in 2022. And then you go to the Vikings here. The Vikings went 13-4 last season, but they were great in one-score games. It's impossible to be as good as they were in one-score games this season as they were last season. They lost Dalvin Cook, but I can find someone to get me 4 yards a carry. I can't find someone to catch the football like Justin Jefferson. That whole offense revolves around him. We know they're going to be just fine on offense. Kirk Cousins is a game manager, obviously. But defensively, they need to get a lot better. So these two teams here, when we look at the Vikings and the Packers, they have a lot of value because, one, they can win the division, and 2, they have a chance to make it in as a wild card. So for plus money on both sides, you kind of get the little hedge there for the division title and a potential wild card spot just to make the playoffs. Definitely worth taking here.
And how much, when you take a look at the Minnesota Vikings, do you think that it is a benefit that everyone's talking about, they got so lucky in one-score games and everything like that? Because certainly, I don't think that they're going to be having quite those results, but I could also see a case, too, where they don't find themselves in so many one-score games as well, and I do think that this is a Vikings team that their core is relatively solid, and I do think that the narrative playing out time and time again, I do think that from one year to another, it is a little bit harder to be able to take that into account just because it is a fresh 2023.
Yeah, they went 13-4 last season. I mean, they still went 13-4. They were great in one-score games, and they're probably not going to be as good in one-score games this year. But the bottom line was they were a 13-4 football team. So that tells me, 1, they know how to win, and 2, they're going to be able to continue to do that because they have the same guys on the field, right? I think it all starts with the quarterback. And Kirk Cousins gets a lot of slack because he's not necessarily great in primetime games, and he's a game
manager.
He's a stat patter. He's a game manager. But when it comes down to Kirk Cousins, the dude's a winner. He wasn't a high draft pick. He came in behind RG3. He's had a much better career than RG3 did. And he's found a way to be a starting quarterback consistently in the NFL. He's a winner. He knows how to win games when it comes down to it. And I think we're going to see the same thing from the Minnesota Vikings this season. I'm not saying they're going to go 13-4. And the defense needs to be a lot better than they were last year because they were god awful. But if the defense is slightly better than last year, they still have Justin Jefferson. They still have a lot of playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. I'm not too worried about them losing Dalvin Cook, and I do think they can make some noise this season, whether it's winning the division or getting in as a wild card team.
And if you're watching Quarterback on Netflix as well, you are certainly winning because I think it's been interesting to take a look at our good friend Kirk Cousins. As joining me on the show, we do have Tanner Kern. He does tremendous work over at DraftKings, and we're taking a look at Longshot teams be able to make the NFL playoffs, teams that are able to provide some plus money. And how do we ever doubt this coach? We are doing so this year. They are dead last in terms of odds to be able to win their division, which I really can't disagree with in the AFC East. But take me through the Patriots, why you like them at plus 250 to be able to make the playoffs.
Patriots have arguably the best pass rusher in the AFC in Matthew Judon. They had the best defensive coach to ever coach in the NFL, best head coach, probably one of the best head coaches of all time, in Bill Belichick, right? Judon's going to easily record double-digit sacks. This defense is returning a lot of guys from last season. We know they're going to be good on that side of the ball, but the biggest complaint about the New England Patriots right now is Mac Jones. Is he going to be good this year? Is he going to be sophomore Mac Jones or rookie Mac Jones? I'll tell you what, Mac Jones led the Patriots to the playoffs as a rookie. He was a Pro Bowl quarterback, and he had one of the best rookie seasons of all time out of a quarterback. And you're telling me that he can't get back to that level? I think that's crazy to think. Last year, he was thrown in an unwinnable situation. He had Matt Patricia and Joe Judge calling an offense. These guys are coaching against the best coaches in the world, and they've never been on the offensive side of the ball. So I think that's very detrimental to a quarterback's growth. Now with Bill O'Brien, he has a chance to settle in, and he's going to be better. There's a lot of weapons on this side of the football for them this year. There's more than they've had in years past. They have their two tight end set ability with Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki this season. I think that's going to help them a lot. They're going to get back to that vintage Patriot style of play here. And Mac Jones, I do think he's going to be a lot better than he was last season. And when it comes down to it, the Bills are the only really complete team in this division. The Jets had a brutal start to their season with their schedule this year. They could be devastated by the halfway point, even though Aaron Rodgers is having fun, and he loves New York City. They might be down for the count by the halfway point. And then you look at the Dolphins, they're reliant on a quarterback with concussion issues. So the Patriots could surprise people. They have a great defense. They have a good enough offense, I think, if Mac Jones can just settle in and be a decent game manager to make some noise. And for plus 250 to make the playoffs, that could come in winning the division or making it as a wild card. That's very realistic.
I am right there with you because even though I do think that the Patriots, they are rightfully number 4 in terms of odds to be able to win the division, this is a bunch that I don't want to be counting out Bill Belichick. We recall 2 years ago, they were able to make the playoffs last year. A little bit of setback, but you don't have Matt Patricia, a natural defensive coordinator, as the offensive coordinator this year. That alone is going to be able to provide a little bit of upside, and we were talking about coaching here. How about if we take a look at this team that made a coaching change in the Denver Broncos? It really can't get worse than Nathaniel Hackett unless if they hired on Urban Meyer, who I don't know if Bishop Sycamore would hire him at this point because that was bad. When you kick your kicker in the leg, that automatically puts you in my book as the worst NFL coach of all time. So Nathaniel Hackett, as a result, he is number 2 on that list, but one of the better coaches that you're ever going to find, that is Sean Payton. I know that he's gotten his team riled up a little bit. He's been a little bit in the news. I think that this has been very calculated to take the pressure off of Russell Wilson, who once Hackett got hacked, he actually looked a little bit better. I like them to be able to make the playoffs personally, and sounds like you're right there with me.
I'll tell you what, going back to the Jets real quick, the backups were on the field tonight in the Hall of Fame game, but Nathaniel Hackett's play calling was god-awful. So I don't have a lot of hope for them either. But going back to the Broncos here, Sean Payton came out and said everything that Nathaniel Hackett did last season, we're doing the opposite. He obviously made a big statement there. I don't think he should have done that. But the one area that he really shouldn't fix that much, he doesn't need to fix, is the defense for this Denver Broncos team. This unit won them games last season. It kept them in games last season. And I think they'll be even better in 2023. They had a top 10 rushing defense, and they were just outside the top 10 in points allowed per game. And they could have been even better statistically, but the only problem was they were on the field so much, it's very hard to be good. So when you look at their stats, think of them as even better if they had a league average offense. They added Frank Clark and Zach Allen in the offseason, which is really going to help the group. 2 solid NFL defenders. And this team, again, it's going to come down to the quarterback. It's going to come down to the offense. I think a theme of most of these teams, it comes down to how their offense moves the football and how their quarterback settles in. And with Russell Wilson, I still believe in him. He's a former MVP. He's a Super Bowl winner. And he has a great coach that already laid down the law and changed the culture. And the weapons that he has to work with are great. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and Greg Dulcich. The offensive line's improved from last year. They brought in former first-round pick, Mike McGlinchey, signed a big $85 million contract in free agency. And I can't say enough good things about this roster talent overall. So if you have the coach, you have the roster talent, you have the defense, and you have a former MVP at quarterback that I do think is going to get better from this year, from last year to this year, there's no reason to think this Broncos team can't be competitive. You have to dominate every team in the division outside the Kansas City Chiefs. And then you got to win your crossover games against the NFC North. And if you can do that, you have a great chance of getting into the postseason. There's nothing special about the NFC North, as we were talking about earlier. So for plus 180 to have a chance to make the playoffs, definitely worth taking here. I think this is a great price.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.